This unsettling story happened to me a few months ago while I was still at my previous job. I thought I'd share it while it's still fresh in my mind. One day, I was working late at the office, and the rest of my coworkers were heading out to share a taxi. I realized I would be the only one left in the building since our boss hadn't come to work for the past few days. Interestingly, he stopped showing up on Valentine's Day, but no one knew if he was seeing anyone, even though he had been coming to work on his motorcycle more often lately. I didn't care much about the gossip, but it was all anyone could talk about at the time. The strong scent of perfume in the office and the mystery gift on his desk also had everyone talking. At first, it was pretty cool not having the boss around, but the security alarm started acting up, and I needed his signature to approve the cost to call someone to fix it. Also, the key to the supply room went missing since he left, and he hadn't returned any of my messages about that or the alarm, which was surprising because he usually took things very seriously. Just as my colleagues were about to leave, they asked if anyone was waiting for me because there was someone sitting inside a car in the parking lot. They seemed genuinely unnerved when I told them I wasn't expecting anyone and decided to quietly leave together, asking me to be careful. It was strange that whoever it was had no business being there, but I initially brushed it off, thinking the car would be gone by the time I got around to checking the parking lot myself. About half an hour later, I received a message on my phone from Josh, one of my coworkers. I was so focused on my work that I had completely forgotten about the matter. I didn't respond to his message right away, but eventually I found an excuse to pass by my boss's office overlooking the parking lot. I went into his office and peeked through the window. As I slowly pulled down the blinds, I was surprised to see someone still waiting in the parking lot. This was highly unusual and creeped me out since the car was parked so close to mine. I couldn't make out who it was, but I could see it was definitely a man smoking a cigarette. There was nothing familiar about him, and I didn't recognize the car. Being the only person in the office, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was waiting for me for some reason, and it would be impossible to get to my car without him seeing me. I quickly returned to my desk and grabbed my phone to take a photo and confirm with Josh that it was the same car from before. While waiting for Josh to respond, the gift on the desk suddenly caught my eye. I thought perhaps it was perfume, explaining the strong scent in the office lately. I was also curious if it was a Valentine's gift and why it was still on his desk. It seemed strange to leave it at the office. As I slowly opened the box, I was surprised to see a passport inside. Suddenly, I received a new message on my phone. I was initially confused by his response, but when I looked closely at the photo again, I saw the car was empty. I was so quick to take the photo I had. I immediately took another peek through the window. The car was still there, but no one was inside. It seemed strange to abandon a car in the middle of the night, especially on a cold February day. It was getting late, and I still had a few more hours of work to catch up on, so I decided to get back to it, hoping the car would be gone by the time I finished. A few hours later, I got curious why Josh hadn't followed up with any other messages, which is when I realized my phone battery was dead. I was too tired to stick around to recharge my phone at the office, so I closed up and cautiously descended into the parking lot. As I left the building, I felt a sudden chill, but I didn't know if it was from the cold air or seeing the same old car still parked and abandoned outside. A couple of things started running through my mind, like maybe he had too much to drink and decided to walk home, or the car was low on gas, but deep down, I had a bad feeling. As I approached the abandoned car, I could see cigarette butts scattered all over the ground, suggesting he had been waiting for a lot longer than I thought. It seemed bizarre to just take off after waiting so long. I proceeded to my car and took one final look back at the office, which suddenly reminded me of the passport on the desk out if he found out someone had been snooping around his office. I reluctantly headed back into the building. I had already worked so late and didn't want to wake up extra early the next morning just to make sure I'd be the first to arrive at the office. I knew there was a chance he wouldn't show up the next day, but I wasn't going to risk it. I didn't bother turning the lights on because I knew my way around and was going to be quick. When I reached my boss's office, I noticed something very strange. The office chair that was behind the desk had been moved. Both the box and the passport were missing. I had only been gone for a few minutes, so it seemed plausible that whoever it was might still be inside the building with me. I quickly observed the rest of the office. Despite the intense moment of silence, I felt somewhat relieved to see the same old familiar office that I had grown accustomed to, and there was no other indication anyone else was there. However, this moment of relief was quickly diminished by a loud thud coming from the supply room. It sounded like something heavy hitting the floor. As I tried to figure out what caused the noise, I heard the sound of a commotion from behind the door. Realizing it was in the supply room, which required a key to open, I began to assume it was my boss or someone else with access to the office. But as I opened the door, I saw something that I would never forget and continues to haunt my darkest dreams. My knee-jerk reaction caused me to dash out of the office and immediately get to my car. Just as I was about to turn on the ignition, I instinctively looked up and saw the dark silhouette of a man standing by the same window in the office. I couldn't see a face, but I knew I was being watched. I turned the key, and my heart sank as the engine failed to start. I tried again repeatedly before looking up at the office again, horrified to see the dark figure had vanished. I gave the key one last turn, and to my relief, the engine started. I drove off and headed to the nearest police station. When I arrived, I told them everything. Thanks to the photo I had taken of the car parked outside and the partial description of the driver, the police made an arrest. Shockingly, the driver turned out not to be my boss, but a relative of his with a violent criminal record. Apparently, my boss wanted to surprise his young girlfriend at the trip to Brazil by inviting her to his office and gifting her a new passport he had arranged. Instead, she wanted to break the whole thing off, and in a fit of desperate rage, he killed her in cold blood and went into hiding. To cover up his crime, he convinced his brother to come by the office to collect the body and dispose of it. I will never forget that night. All the days I could smell her perfume as her lifeless body remained hidden behind the door while I went about my daily job, and the terrifying thought of being alone at night in the office with a violent criminal. I can only imagine what might have occurred had I not left the building or driven away sooner. I consider myself very lucky. I never saw my boss again after that. In fact, no more. He became a ghost. His last known location was somewhere in Rio, and that was it. A few weeks later, I quit my job and started working security at the sublevel of a local hospital. It felt like a step back, and I had serious reservations about working so close to the morgue. But I didn't think anything could be worse than